Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel, A Magical Life with Ayla. Hello, I'm Ayla, and today we're going to carry on with our discussion about the laws of magic. So let's get started. So the laws of magic are a set of precepts that help us to remind us to be aware of the vibration that we are emitting all of the time. So we already went through the first set, the law of knowledge, the law of self-knowledge, the law of cause and effect, the law of synchronicity, the law of association, the law of similarity, the law of contagion, the law of names, and now we're going to pick it up with the law of words of power. Now, you hear me say a lot, because I say a lot, that magic happens because of what we think, what we say, and what we do. Now, all three of these, completely alone by themselves individually, are incredibly powerful. These are incredibly powerful ideas. What we think of, what we talk about, and what we do. And what we want to do is we want to bring all three of those things in alignment with each other and with our desires. So if you are trying to get well, if you're trying to get over an illness, you don't want to be thinking things. I got the flu last summer and it lasted for 3 weeks. And long towards the end, I remember thinking to myself, I'm not ever going to get well. It didn't feel like I was ever going to get well. But then, of course, I did, because that's how those types of illnesses work. But that was a thought, and that wasn't a very positive thought. That thought was motivated by my illness. So what we're going to talk about first of all here is the law of words of power. Now, what they're specifically talking about when they say words of power is they're speaking of incantation. Let me just be the one to tell you that incantation is not the only set of powerful words that we speak. Depending on how you talk to your children is how they will grow up to be. Your own self-talk, we've gone over the self-talk on this channel before, and your own self-talk is so important, because this decides who you are. Okay? Think about that for a minute. Your self-talk determines who you are. Also in self-talk is the idea of how we talk to each other as adults. We want to be very careful how we talk to our children, but we also want to be careful how we talk to each other as adults. If you're in a relationship that's not going well, try to refrain from that insulting, demeaning, disrespectful way that many times we degrade into when a relationship is getting ready to pass away. That's not helpful. Talking to each other that way when you're getting ready to end a relationship or when a relationship is in trouble is not helpful. So words are really, really powerful. I think of the three, of the thinking, of the saying, of the doing, words might have a little tiny bit more clout because they're ever present. It's like you don't have to act on something. If you get a bright idea, you may not act on it for a while, and that's okay. You may have a bright idea, and for quite some time you might not think about it. I mean, I'll have a bright idea, and then life kicks in, and I stop thinking about my bright idea because I got to go think about life. But your words are always there, always, always there. And how you speak to other people says more about you than it does about them. Okay? So you always want to choose your words very carefully. Let me read you what he has here, the law of words of power. There exist certain words that are able to alter the internal and external realities of those uttering them, and the power may rest in the very sounds of the words as much as their meaning. Many of such words are names, though the namings may have been lost or forgotten. Very many magical tools require words to be inscribed upon them and or said over them during their construction and or use. Okay, so this words of power on this little list that I'm reading from, they're talking about incantation, they're talking about magical words. But let me put forth this idea. What if we treated all words like they were magical? What if we treated all people like they were magical? Does that kind of put it in a different context? We wouldn't want to speak negatively to a brother or a sister in magic. But why would we speak negatively to anybody? Why would we use the power of our words to speak negatively to any human being, to any animal, to any child? And you noticed I said human beings and then I included children. Children are special. They're in a different class by themselves. So we want to be really, really careful and be aware of the words that we use and how we use them and who we're using them on. Okay? So that's the law of words of power. The next one is the law of personification. Do you know this word personification? This is really, really powerful when we personify something. Let me give you an example. I know all of us can understand this example. When we treat our pets, our cats and our dogs, like they are people. That's a personification. Okay? So let me read you what he has here. Any phenomenon may be considered to be alive. Any phenomenon may consider to be alive and to have a personality. That is, to be an entity or being. Anything can be a person. Most weather mages personify the winds and the clouds, for example, and thus find focusing their magic on the atmosphere much easier to do so. So this is kind of what we did with God, isn't it? We kind of, when I was a little girl, the Christian personification of God was this old, angry, bearded, old man that sat on a big wooden throne, micromanaging everybody's life. Now that's a personification, isn't it? That's a whopper of a personification. And we have done this with our gods and goddesses. I think that perhaps, maybe this is just a thought, that at one point in history, many of our gods and goddesses actually existed on this planet. And if you read their mythologies, lots of times it seems like it, doesn't it? they may have, and then what we have done is we have personified them further by adding more and more energy to that idea of the personification of that God. We call this an archetype. So an archetype is an idea or the personification of something that picks up momentum. You know, if a lot of people believe that the statue that stands in town square has the power to heal you or has the power to judge you and punish you, that is an archetype. It's a personification of an energy. And there's nothing wrong with this. The reason why we're talking about this in the laws of magic is because this actually winds up to be a very powerful thing. If you can personify something, you can relate better to it, right? Okay, now here's the downfall with personifying something. If you personify, let's say, God or a goddess, that personification many times will take on the weaknesses of the person who is personifying it. So in the Old Testament, in the Christian Bible, there's this idea that God is this vengeful, angry, jealous God. Do you think that's possible? I don't think it's possible. But in the personification of God at that moment, the men who were personifying the male God were feeling those things. So God was angry and jealous and vengeful. God is a creative energy. It has none of those things. You can personify it. You can personify it any way you like because you're human and you can do that. But I find it much more comfortable to just know that source energy is there doing what it does all the time. It creates. Personifying our gods and goddesses, personifying the elements. That can wind out to be very powerful. Maybe you're a person who does much better in the abstract. So to have a personification doesn't work for you. It doesn't matter. Wherever your power is at, if it's in the personification of a deity, an entity, a being, then do that. If it's not, then don't. Okay? So that's the personification. The law of invocation. Now I'm going to talk about the law of invocation and the law of evocation at the same time. So let me read you the law of invocation. It is possible to establish internal communication with entities from either inside or outside oneself. Said entities seeming to be inside of oneself during the communication process. Now, what do we call that? It's kind of a scary word, isn't it? We call that invocation. We call that possession, don't we? Okay. Then the evocation. It is possible to establish external communication with entities from either inside or outside oneself. Said entities seeming to be outside oneself during the communication process. So here's how you remember this. Invocation, you take them in. Okay, invocation, you take them into yourself. Evocation, you just bring them to, you call them to yourself. Okay, so on this path, on the path of magic and paganism, invocation is can be a channeling. Many channels take in the entity who wants to speak and to be channeled forth. Many people who channel do not step completely back. The first guys, they step completely back and they let that being completely inhabit their body. Or they don't step completely back. They're present inside their body, but they share that place with the entity that wants to be channeled. This is not as scary as it sounds. Certain religions on this planet has made us think that if this happens, that we use the word possession, they use the word possession, and you were a victim. There was nothing you could do to stop it from happening, and once it's happened, there's not much you can do to make it stop, to make that entity get out of your body. On this path, it's like we don't really think that. We think that in order for an entity to come in, there needs to be a purpose. Do they have a message? They want to channel a message. Do they have something they need to get done? And then they don't get to come in without express permission from the host body. Okay, so invocation is kind of an agreement between me and another entity. I have never, to my knowledge, taken anyone in, taking another being or entity inside of myself. So I can't really speak to that, but I do know this little bit about it. So evocation. Now, we really do a lot in ritual. We do a lot of evoking, don't we? So we evoke the corners, north, east, south, and west, and we evoke the elements, earth, air, fire, and water. We bring them to us. We ask them to come into our circle. And when I do a ritual, I leave a moment for the people, the celebrants who are present, to call forth any other entity, being, god, or goddess that they would like to call into the ritual. And that's an evocation. An evocation is an invitation to come and to hold communion with them and them with us. Okay, so that's evocation. The law of identification. It is possible through maximum association between elements of oneself and those of another being to actually become that being. To actually become that being to the point of sharing its knowledge and wielding its power. This is the law that controls most lengthy or permanent possession phenomenon. Okay, it doesn't have to be long term. It can be short term. What do we call this? On this path, we call this shape-shifting, don't we? So you can shape-shift into an eagle, you can shape-shift into a bear, and you take on the symbolic attributes of that animal. Okay. This is, I don't do a lot of this. I'm not really sure that I've ever done this. But I do know that specifically if you're working on a problem, if you're working on an issue, that this can be helpful. Okay, because you gain the knowledge and the wisdom of whatever being that is that has taken possession of you. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The law of personal universes. I like this one. I like this one a lot. Every sentient being lives in and quite possibly creates a unique universe which can never be 100% identical to that lived in by another. So in other words, let me just stop right there for a minute. So in other words, I remember in college studying the fact that we are not the center of the universe. I am not the center of the universe, I am the center of my universe. And you should be the center of your universe. This is a very powerful thing when you stop to realize that your world revolves around you. not the world, but your world revolves around you. Okay? So your perceptions, your ideas, your philosophies, everything that makes up your reality, everything that makes up your world, is unique to everyone else. And no two people are going to share the same reality because we are all so uniquely different. Now, you will find a person who you have similar thoughts and beliefs and philosophies and ideas with, and you will have a pretty good amount of resonance with that, vibrational resonance with that person. I've seen people who pretty much resonate completely together, but all of their thoughts and their ideas and their philosophies and everything that made up their world was so vastly different that they couldn't even be friends. So it's interesting. It's interesting. But what this is saying is that your personal universe is different than anybody else's personal universe. Okay. So-called reality is in fact a matter of consensus and opinion. Okay. Consensus means we all agree. That's what a consensus is. A consensus opinion means that we all have the same opinion. So a consensus opinion on this realm on Earth might be that certain illnesses exist. How can certain illnesses exist when we know that vibrationally illnesses do not exist at all? Well, it's a vibration, but you don't have to be there. So why do certain consensus illnesses exist? Because we agree that they exist. We agree. So we have some dreaded illnesses that have been around for years and years and years and years. And when you hear those words, you go, oh no. We all agree that those are dreaded illnesses that exist on this realm. So what happens inside your own little universe that we talked about, just the one above? What happens when you're in your own little universe and you think to yourself and you say to yourself and you do, I don't think that that illness exists in my universe. Matter of fact, I'm certain that illness doesn't exist in my universe. What happens then? Well, it vanishes, right? So, let me read the rest of this. This law is nowhere near as obvious as the other laws in its application, but if you can figure some out, you can use it. Okay, so what he's saying there, it's kind of worded kind of strange, but what I was just saying, if we step out of what is agreed upon, and in our own little universe, we say, this does not exist, then we heal ourselves. Then, in the absence of that vibration, because we're not going to spend a lot of time thinking about that, what are we going to start thinking about? Well, if this illness doesn't exist, then this wellness does. This health does. This healing exists. And that becomes our focus. So that is the law of infinite, that is the law of personal universes. And let's go into the infinite universes. I think that's where we were anyway. Anything is possible. Let's see here. The total number of universes in which all possible combination of existing phenomenon can be organized is infinite. Anything is possible, though some things are more probable than others. You might consider this to refer to alternate probability worlds of science fiction, but it also has a much wider application. I take it to mean that we are running timelines side by side. We are running our own universes and our own timelines side by side. If you've ever watched the movie Frequency, I think it's called Frequency, and it's about a young man whose father died, and through some timelines, they connect with each other, and he keeps jumping timelines, trying to find the timeline where his father's still alive, where everything's good. He'll jump into a timeline and this and this and this is missing. So he'll leave that timeline, he'll jump into another timeline where this and this and this is missing, until he finally gets to the last timeline where they're playing baseball. Somebody hits the ball and it breaks the headlight on someone's car. That's it. That's the worst thing that happened in that timeline. That's kind of what he was going for. So the belief is, many mystics hold the belief that we have lives lined up next to each other. And I call them timelines because I don't know what else to call them. But one example that I heard was of that it's kind of like movie reels and the metal canisters, and the movie people set the canisters up on their side like this. And whichever one of these movies is running is the one that you put your attention on. So in other words, you take the movie out of the canister, you put it in the film projector, and that's the movie that you're running. So let's say you get a fourth of the way into that movie, you don't like that movie, so you take it off, you put it back in the canister, you get the next one. So I've heard this in two different styles, that all of the lives are the same with variations, like in the movie Frequency. Another one I heard was that each one of these timelines were solid in itself. You're not going to jump from timeline to timeline, but your consciousness is actually in each one of those timelines. And the purpose of that is, we get evolution, us little humanoid beings that come to Earth. We get evolution by living a lifetime. We get evolution and growth by living a timeline. So I'm living a timeline, you're living a timeline. We were born, a bunch of stuff happened in between that, and then you died over here on the other end. That's a timeline. And in that timeline was many, many, many opportunities to evolve and grow. So, since we're so many humanoid beings on this planet want to get as much done in as short a period of time, we run a bunch of lives at the same time, and we split our consciousness, because we can do that, into each one of these timelines. So there's some idea about the infinite universe. Okay, there's so much going on in our universe, we have no idea. It's like we see a fragment down here, and in our magic and in our magical perception and in our magical understanding, we only see but a fraction of what's actually going on in the universe. So it's kind of cool. It's something to look forward to. Okay, so let's go on to the law of pragmatism. Okay. If a pattern of belief or behavior enables a being to survive and to accomplish chosen goals, then that belief or behavior is true or real or sensible for that person. Okay, it may not be true or real or sensible for anyone else. Okay, if it works, it's true. Another rather obscure law, but it does have some very useful applications. I see this a lot in children. You know, a child will tell you about their invisible friend, and how at night them and their invisible friend goes and flies around, and you're starting to notice as the parent that the child is losing a lot of their fear. And then they tell you, oh, it's because I go with my friend at night and we fly all over the world and I'm not afraid anymore. Okay. Well, adults do similar things, maybe not to that, but you will have a spiritual practice or a religious practice, um, and you keep doing it, and every time you keep doing that, it helps you somehow. It helps you connect to your power, helps you connect to God, helps you connect to yourself. It may help you heal. That's what meditation did for me, was, first of all, connect me to the divine. But then second of all, huge, huge, huge healing in my mind and in my body. So anything that works for you, and this is why we talk about silence, being careful, knowing who you're talking, who is your audience, that you're telling them, oh, well, I wash my ring finger on my right hand at night before I go to bed, and the angels come and surround me. Okay, if that works for you, I have a simple little prayer and the angels come and surround me, but that's all right. If washing your ring finger on your right hand causes the angels to come and be with you, good. Okay, this is so nice that we get to decide what works for us. So here's some more on pragmatism. I was kind of looking for a definition of pragmatism. So pragmatism comes from the Greek pragma, or deed, and it generally means looking for a solution that best gets things done. So if something is pragmatic, that's the thing that's going to get it done for you. Okay. And when we're talking about magical stuff, there again, it's like, it can be kind of odd. Each person can have a pragmatic solution to something that's kind of odd, but it works for them. So that's the important part. Its closest synonym, so the word that best describes this, is expediency. Expediency. The pragmatic solution may have ideals, but they are willing, the pragmatic solution may have ideals, but they are willing to compromise on those ideals in situations where a greater good can be achieved. Where a greater good can be achieved. Okay, so we've decided this is what works for us. We've decided here's the pragmatic solution that's going to get it done for us. Okay, we're going to do it this way. But if we give a little on that, we can help a whole bunch of people instead of a small group of people. Okay. Yet because they are willing to compromise on those solutions, the idealist will see this as a betrayal on their part. Okay, so I think they're kind of talking about something different here than what we're talking about. So I think the thing that we need to keep in mind here is that if something works for you, then use that. Now, the problem you get into is when something works for you. When I had my first experience with meditation, my life was so deeply, profoundly, awesomely affected and changed for the good forever. I have never gone back to that dark place that I was in before I started meditating. After one meditation session, I was healed. I have found that doesn't work for everybody because we are such complicated little beings that does not work for everybody. Okay, so that is the law of pragmatism, and I'm going to stop there, and we'll have one more video on the laws of magic. Now, as we're going through the laws, my channel is all about the vibration of magic. I should have just called it that. And the reason why I want to focus on the actual vibration of our words and our thoughts and our deeds is because if you tell somebody, oh, all you need to do to be magical and to solve all your problems is be positive. Okay, what does that mean exactly? But when you start talking in terms of the fact that we are vibrational beings, that our cells vibrate with the atoms, the protons and the neutrons and the electrons, and everything is sparking and arcing and alive and vibrating. That's where that vibration comes from, is from our atoms, our cells, which affects our tissues and our organs and our entire reality. So when you look at the laws of magic, and you might even, before we're done with this, you might even think of a few more laws that you think are important to your magic. I would love to hear about that. So be sure and put that in the comments below. But we want to always be looking at our vibrations. I don't watch horror films. I don't watch horror films because they fuck with my vibration. They mess me up. Some horror films mess me up really bad. I like some of the YouTube channels that deal with murder and stuff like that. You know, I don't know why this sort of thing fascinates me, but I can only watch for a little while. And then I have to stop watching for a while because it really messes with my vibration. And it's the thought that messes with my vibration is the thoughts that I have while I'm watching these videos is very distracting. The thoughts cause fear, a little bit of fear that, oh my gosh, look out into the world, people are doing this to each other. So it becomes it's very baffling to me why this is of such interest to me, because it really doesn't make me feel good. And so I have to, I have to go long periods not watching stuff like that. I have to protect my vibration. And the way we protect our vibration, the way we shield our vibration is through our thoughts. Because our thoughts are going to cause feelings, and that those feelings that come from our heart is what's going to affect our vibration. So you want to really protect your vibration. So pay attention to what you watch on television. I stopped watching the evening news years and years and years ago because it seemed to me, all they wanted to do was scare us. And I believe that there's a lot more in this world to love, to be fascinated with, to enjoy, than just the things that are happening that can make us feel afraid. So I stopped watching the news. I like I said, I do watch some stuff on YouTube that is not good for my vibration. I have to kind of be the adult in that situation and be like, okay, little Ayla, it's time to take a break from the scary content. Yeah, books that we read, friends that we have. Do you have a friend, or have you ever had a friend who sees the negative in everything, who sees the scary in everything? I had a family member that was always trying to scare me. She called me one night and she said, I want you to turn off all the lights in your house and get down on the floor because there's a woman walking up and down the street with a shotgun. And the first thought I had was, yeah, stuff like that never happens to me. It's like she could shoot up every house on the street and miss mine. That's how my life goes. But that is a firmly rooted belief that I have, that these scary negative things just don't happen to me. I've always had that belief. So I had to really limit my contact with her because she was always saying stuff like that to me. Or a friend who is way over the top with the negativity, just all the time. Or a friend who is sick all the time. and wants to tell you about her all of her many illnesses and the new illnesses and the illnesses that are happening to her every day. I have a really hard time with this, and I can feel it affecting my vibration. So, yeah, we're gonna make another video, the last portion of the laws of magic, and just stay in that place. Think about how the things that we're talking about affect you. Okay, affect your vibration. So if you like my videos and you would like to support the making of these videos, I have Patreon now. I have Buy Me a Coffee. You can check those both out. They're brand new, so I'm just getting content up on there. And also, all of this stuff is at the bottom of the description section, right underneath the screen. So that's all I have to say today. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Blessed be.